What happens when a powerful preacher with buried secrets crosses paths with a desperate woman who has nothing left to lose? Will truth be their redemption, or the spark that sets everything ablaze? Sit back, grab your popcorn, and discover the shocking tale inspired by true events. The Revered Preacher. In a bustling city in southern Nigeria, there was a pastor everyone looked up to. His name was Pastor Daniel. He led a megachurch with a massive following, drawing crowds from distant towns every Sunday. Worshippers packed the church to its edges, some standing outside just to hear the man of God speak. Pastor Daniel's voice was commanding, and his sermons often left listeners in tears. Many swore he had a divine gift. He laid hands on the sick, provided for widows, and presided over weddings with grace. But behind his magnetic smile and holy image, Pastor Daniel lived a double life. He had secrets, dark ones only a select few dared whisper about. One evening after midweek service, Pastor Daniel reclined in his plush office. The air was heavy with the scent of cologne. A young usher knocked and entered, looking nervous. "Sir, the board members would like to see you," the usher said quietly. Pastor Daniel looked up, flashing a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Tell them I'll join them shortly." As the usher exited, Pastor Daniel leaned back, and his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. "God is watching. Change your ways before it's too late." He stared at the message, smirked, then hit delete without hesitation. Ella's burden. Ella was a young woman with dreams larger than her circumstances. When she landed a position as Pastor Daniel's personal assistant, everyone called it a blessing. But to Ella, it was merely survival. Her mother was gravely ill and needed expensive care. Ella had bills to pay and no other source of income. The job felt like divine intervention. But Ella carried her own secret. She was HIV positive, a truth she kept even from her closest friends. On her first day, she wore a modest pink blouse and a navy skirt. Standing outside Pastor Daniel's office, she knocked gently. "Come in," his deep voice called. Ella entered, nerves evident in her voice. "Good afternoon, sir." Pastor Daniel smiled. "You must be Ella. Welcome. I've heard good things about you." "Thank you, sir," she replied. "This job demands loyalty, discretion, and sacrifice," he said, watching her closely. "Are you ready for that?" "I am, sir." "Good. We are like family here. Protect each other. Trust one another. If anything troubles you, come to me." Ella nodded, but as she left his office, something in his polished charm felt wrong, like a mask too carefully worn. She brushed it off. She needed the job. That was all that mattered. But a quiet warning echoed in her mind: this job might cost more than you're ready to pay. Cracks appear. 2 weeks in, Ella was already handling Pastor Daniel's calendar, sorting emails, and planning church events. She stayed late, worked hard, and did everything right. "You're doing well," Pastor Daniel said one afternoon, handing her a file. "Very smart. I wish more of my staff were like you." "Thank you, sir," she responded with a polite smile. But soon, the compliments grew personal. "You look beautiful today," he said one morning. "That color brings out your glow." Ella forced a smile. Was it flattery or something else? Then, one evening, as she was about to leave, Pastor Daniel called her in. "You're not just hard-working, you're different. Special," he said, leaning in. Ella lowered her gaze. "Thank you, sir. I just try to do my work. You should know your worth. A woman like you should be valued." She rose quickly. "I'll complete today's work by tomorrow, sir." "Wait," he said. "Don't feel uneasy. You can trust me." "Yes, sir," she replied, but the unease grew. That night, Ella couldn't sleep. His words lingered. Why is he saying these things? She asked herself. The trap. Days later, the intercom buzzed. Ella, come to my office. She grabbed her notepad and walked in. Sit, Pastor Daniel said warmly. She did, expecting instructions. But he reached for her hand instead. You're not just efficient. You're stunning. Rare. She pulled her hand away. Sir, let's stick to the work. Pastor Daniel chuckled, voice cool. Don't be uptight. Opportunities like this don't come twice. You're in a position many would die for. I'm just here to work, she said quietly. His tone hardened. Then be smart. Many women would do anything for your spot. Think about it. She left his office shaken but determined. A week later, she arrived to find a termination letter on her desk. Your services are no longer required. When she tried to see him, the guards turned her away. Ella walked out of the church that day with nothing but a box of her belongings and tears in her eyes. She had no idea this was only the beginning. Retaliation. Months passed. Ella struggled. Her mother's treatment stalled. Rent was overdue. One morning, desperate, she returned to the church. Pastor Daniel was surprised to see her. I need my job back, she pleaded. Please. You didn't value what I gave you, he replied, voice cold. Do you know how many women want your position? I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she whispered. His smile returned. Anything? Ella nodded. Come back Monday. But remember, loyalty is everything. That day, Ella made a vow, play along. But record everything. The setup. Hotel rooms. Secret meetings. Cash envelopes. You don't need protection, Pastor Daniel once said. God shields his servants. Ella hid her disgust, forcing herself through each encounter. She recorded conversations. Saved every text. Tracked every hotel visit. Her heart broke each time, but her mission kept her going. The pastor's wife. Lydia, Pastor Daniel's wife, noticed changes. Late nights. Sudden calls. Cold silences. One morning, she summoned Ella. Tell me the truth, she said. Is something happening between you and my husband? Ella's voice barely held. No, Ma. I respect you. I would never. Lydia stared at her. I hope you're not lying. Because if you are, it won't end well. Ella walked out, trembling. The net was tightening. That evening, Lydia called her closest friend. Help me, she said. I need to uncover the truth. Grace was restless. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, she sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing. Her instincts screamed at her, louder than ever. Pastor David, her husband, was hiding something. And Amara, the young assistant, was at the center of it. The next morning, Grace met with a discreet private investigator named Felix. They sat in a quiet cafe far from the church. I don't want gossip, Grace told him. I need the truth. Real proof. Felix nodded, sliding a notepad toward her. Tell me everything. Names, patterns, times. I'll handle the rest. Meanwhile, Amara continued working for Pastor David, pretending to submit while collecting more evidence. Her phone was filled with audio recordings, photos of money envelopes, and even a few blurry videos from the hotel rooms. But she hadn't yet decided how to use them. One night, as Pastor David lay beside her, satisfied and smug, he said something that made her blood run cold. You know, if you ever tried to turn against me, no one would believe you. I'm the man of God. You're just desperate. Amara smiled weakly. Inside, she was boiling. That was the moment she decided, she was going to expose him. Grace's discovery. A week later, Felix returned with photos. They showed Pastor David entering and leaving a local hotel on multiple occasions, with Amara. Grace stared at the pictures, her hand trembling. "He lied to me. He mocked our vows," she said quietly. Felix handed her a flash drive. "There's more. Audio clips, texts. You'll want to hear these in private." That night, Grace listened. Every word made her chest tighten: David's seductive voice, Amara's hesitant replies, the promise of money in exchange for silence. By morning, her mind was made up. She wasn't going to confront her husband privately. No, he had shamed her in secret, but she would deal with him in the open. Sunday came. The church was packed as usual. Pastor David stood on stage, smiling, hands raised in praise. But just before he began his sermon, Grace walked onto the altar. "Good morning, church," she said, her voice firm. "I need to share something important today. Not as a pastor's wife, but as a woman, one who has been lied to." Whispers spread like wildfire through the congregation. Grace held up the flash drive. "This contains proof of what your man of God has been doing behind closed doors. Affairs. Lies. Manipulation. All while standing on this pulpit." Pastor David stepped forward. "Grace, stop this madness." But Grace turned to him, her eyes cold. "Don't speak. I gave you everything. And you spat on it." She dropped the microphone and walked off stage. News spread fast. By evening, clips of Grace's revelation had gone viral. Church members were stunned. Some refused to believe it. Others cried in disbelief. Pastor David tried to deny everything, claiming he was being framed. But the evidence was too strong. The church elders suspended him pending investigation. Sponsors withdrew, and his reputation collapsed almost overnight. Amara watched it all unfold from her small apartment. She felt a mix of relief and sorrow. She hadn't expected Grace to be the one to bring him down, but she was glad she didn't have to do it alone. Weeks passed. Grace filed for divorce. Amara, after much internal struggle, began speaking to women's groups about her experience, anonymously at first, then publicly. She still lived with the weight of everything that happened, but now, she had a voice. And she used it. One night, after speaking at a women's conference, a young girl approached her. "Thank you for sharing your story," she whispered. "It gave me the courage to leave my boss." Amara smiled for the first time in a long while. Maybe everything she endured had a purpose. Pastor David sat alone in a dark hotel room. The curtains were drawn, the room silent except for the low hum of the minibar fridge. His phone had stopped ringing. The elders weren't returning his calls. His lawyer had warned him to stay quiet. All his influence, gone. He stared at the TV screen, where a talk show was replaying the now viral church confrontation. Grace's voice echoed in the background. "This contains proof of what your man of God has been doing behind closed doors." He picked up his glass and hurled it across the room. Grace stood in front of the mirror. She had cut her hair short, a symbol of shedding the old. The divorce papers had been signed that morning. No drawn-out court battle. David's legal team wanted to avoid further public scandal, and she wanted peace. She smiled softly at her reflection. For the first time in years, she saw a woman, not a role, not a reputation to maintain, not a victim. Just her. Grace had been asked to speak at a women's leadership forum. At first, she declined. But now, she felt the urge to tell her story. Not for revenge. For restoration. After Grace's speech, more women came forward, former church assistants, volunteers, even a young single mother from another branch of the ministry. They shared similar stories: manipulation, promises of help, and then abuse. One woman, Deborah, filed a formal complaint with the church board, citing coerced consent under threat of being excommunicated. Another woman had emails, screenshots, money transfers. A special committee was formed. The church couldn't ignore it anymore. Amara received a message request one night. It was from a news agency. They wanted an exclusive interview. She stared at the message for a long time. She didn't crave fame, but truth needed a platform. She called Grace. "I got an offer to tell my side," Amara said. "I don't want to go viral. I want it to matter." Grace answered gently, "Then tell it your way. Just remember. You owe no one your pain unless sharing it heals you." Amara agreed to the interview, on the condition it focus on abuse of power in religious spaces, not scandal. Months later, a new church began forming, not in a building, but in circles of trust. Grace and Amara worked together to create a foundation for women exiting exploitative religious environments. They offered legal resources, counseling, and housing help. They called it the Wellspring Project. Ironic, Amara had said at the launch. "He told me I was a broken vessel. And here we are, building a well." The camera lights dimmed. The interview was over. The reporter had asked Amara one final question. "What would you say to Pastor David today, if you were face to face?" She'd thought about it long and hard. Then answered.